What do you make of this? Is the dollar trade, the swoon of the greenback, really the overriding trade for the second half of this year?
Depending who you speak to, I think a lot of people would definitely say yes. I think it depends on your consensus or your thoughts. If you really think that, hey, rates have basically peaked because we're looking for the Fed to hike in July, and you think July's it's it, and you think Fed's going to cut next year because of slowing growth, then there's a good reason to say, okay, well, the dollar has peaked because interest rate differentials will way down. You're looking for the ECB to raise, looking for the Bank of England to raise, Bank of Canada may raise. So when you compare the Fed to every other central bank, it looks like it's plateauing quicker, which basically would be bad for the dollar. So if that's your stance, then you go, yes, that's the case. Now, having said that, there's always a caveat to any trade, and no exception with the dollar. The key thing is, has the dollar rates peaked? Yes, CPI is falling, but if you look at core PCO, which is the preferred data inflation measure, that's still 4.6%. Wage data on the inflation report, in the wage report was 4.4%, which is way higher than needed for 2% inflation. So there's grounds to question whether the Fed rate has peaked. So that's one thing. And the second thing is the second side of the equation. If it's the dollar's peaked, well, against what? Against basically every other country the market's going. So but then therefore, if the pound or the euro, which are two big weightings in the dollar index and the Bloomberg dollar index, if they were to start faltering, the dollar by default would start gaining. So I think the question becomes there is not only will the BOE hike or ECB hike, that's sort of guaranteed and expected, it's how will the economies react to that. If those economies are forced into a recession, then and the US economy doesn't go into a recession, then you could actually see sterling and euro coming under pressure, which would help the dollar by default. So near term, yes, dollar. Longer term, a lot more choppy trade, a lot more obstacles have to be got over to see the dollar continually go down.